Founded in 2014, the Extraordinary Achievers' vision is to empower others to be the best version of themselves. The show is hosted by Chief Lady Waynette Peters, a multi-entrepreneur, empowerment speaker, confidence mentor, positive lifestyle coach, humanitarian ambassador, and a TV host. Lady Waynette is a holder of over 35 international awards for her humanitarian, philanthropic, and international empowerment contributions and holds 2 chieftaincy titles. Welcome to the Extraordinary Achievers Show.
We welcome you back. And though we have a serious mind topic today that we are going to be discussing, I cannot help but be excited for the knowledge and the awareness creation. And I'd like to say thank you for joining us. The Extraordinary Achievers is a non-profit organization. We are an online TV production, bringing a weekly online program covering topics in areas ranging from mindfulness, self-awareness, self-development, and empowerment. True stories, community interests, and affairs. We interview coaches, industry experts, and individuals either with true stories or those that have gone through something or raise awareness to that which creates awareness. The Extraordinary Achievers also works in collaboration and in unity with other community enhancement organizations or projects for the enhancement and betterment of others. And we would like to say, for sharing this program, we thank you. For taking time out, we thank you. We would like to thank all our former guests. Last week, we brought to you the program Narcissist Behavioral Patterns and Awareness. Today, we delve in further and we address control freaks and narcissism, a personality disorder. We will be exploring, as it is said in the slang of psychology, the colloquial term control freak, which describes a person with a personality disorder characterized by undermining other people, usually by the way of controlling behavior manifested in the ways they act and to detect the order of things in a social situation. We will also take a look at another look from the author of Control Freak as we address wolves in sheep's clothing. We would like to say hello to some of our viewers at home as our comments come up on the screen. We acknowledge you whether you have typed in and said hello or not. We acknowledge you and we thank you for being with us. YouTube, hello. Facebook, all the various platforms that we are live on, we say welcome and thank you. Our website, viewers, LinkedIn, Twitter, Meetup, we would like to say thank you for joining us again today. Let's see who has sent us a hello coming up. Mr. Simon C. Brown says good evening, and my dear friend, and good evening to you too, my darling friend. Dole Sophia Lambra says, wow, and I say, hey, thanks, hon. Banga says, good evening, everyone, and good evening to you, and thank you for joining us again. Pastor Rosling says, hi, Lady Waynette, and hello to you, Pastor Rosling, and thank you for joining us. And Angie says, hi, Lady Waynette Peters and team, and thank you for joining us this evening. Metal Gear Sniper says, hi, everyone, and hello to you too. And Angie says, beautiful in blue. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. We welcome you all today from wherever you are. And the wonderful and amazing Vicky Garvey says, good evening. And she's saying good evening to our special guest and good evening to you, Dole. And thank you for sharing this program everywhere you have opportunity to do so. Coach Sherry Ann Dixon, who joined us last week as we talked about narcissism and behavioral patterns, joins us today. And she says she loves the topic we are covering. And we thank you for your time, your knowledge, expertise, and for empowering others. And Doc Mtoka says, good evening, T family, and good evening to you too. Holly says, good evening, Lady Waynette, and good evening to you. It's going to be an amazing show, she says. And yes, we are excited. Serious topic, but we're excited to learn. It's all about learning. I'd like to introduce you to Sean McGlynn, the author of Control Freak. And I'm going to introduce you with his book, which is available on Amazon. It is available on various platforms that this book is available to. The dedication says this book is dedicated to all those who have been abused physically or mentally by someone they loved and trusted, without whose stories it wouldn't have been written. I can only hope that with the growing awareness, help, and support that this is out there, they will become less and less. Remember that if you are afraid to live your life and to share your thoughts and feelings for the fear of retribution, it is not a loving relationship. It is time to get help and get out. And I would like to welcome Sean to our screen. Welcome to the Extraordinary Achievers. And thank you for joining us all the way from Ireland. Thank you. Sean, can you hear us? Sean's frozen there for a minute, but I'm just going to read this book about this bit about Sean. It says, I began studying law in 1979. I had just married the person to whom I'm still married over 40 years later. One of the subjects I chose for my degree in 1982 was family law. It took my interest even at the young age of 23 by the theory I learned in university, and that didn't fully prepare me for the reality. Soon after, I opened my own practice. One of my clients was murdered by her husband, despite doing the right thing, going to court and applying for a barring order. It wasn't enough. He ignored it. The consequences of a non-compliance with the court order did not cross the mind of someone who is obsessed. Things got worse. And he was obsessed in getting his own way. He didn't want anyone else to have her. We will connect later to Sean. We are going to introduce you now to the professor that we have on the show today. Professor Oluwafemi Esan is a professor of transparency psychology at Elroy London University. He is the Vice Chancellor, PhD in Transpersonal Psychology, a Principal Consultant in Transpersonal Psychology. His focus is on a non-concept of spiritual transpersonal psychology with psychosynthesis coaching. He is a development of the transpersonal self through spiritual coaching, organizing seminars and workshops, and awareness with the application of transpersonal psychology in everyday living. Professor Femi Esan is hosting Finding Meaning in Life through Transpersonal Identity Discovery Workshop, and that's on Thursday, the 29th of July at 9 a.m. to 9:45 a.m. You will explore what self-concept is and its impact on life. We will talk about identity crisis and finding your vision. Professor, welcome onto the Extraordinary Achievers.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. It is such a pleasure to have you here with us today. Professor Oluwafemi Esan is the Global Academic Director for Elroy London Coaching Academy. He's an ordained Minister of Religion, a transpersonal coaching psychologist, a former chaplain at the University of East London. He obtained an MSc in coaching psychology at the University of East London in 2013. He was the first postgraduate student to research spiritual coaching in the field of transpersonal psychology at the School of Psychology University in East London between 2011 and 2013. He has over 10 years of research experience in the field of transpersonal leadership coaching. In 2015, he obtained a level 7 PGCE at the University of Greenwich, making him a qualified professional secondary school teacher and lecturer. He further obtained a postgraduate certificate in learning and teaching in higher education. He has trained over 200 trainee teachers in the last 5 years in England, a doctoral candidate at their thesis phase of a professional doctorate education at Canterbury Christ Church University, Kent in England. Professor, we welcome such wisdom and experience onto the show today with our very first question that we have for you today. First of all, we would like to say, viewers at home, if you've just joined us, thank you for joining the Extraordinary Achievers Show. Thank you for sharing, thank you for liking, and thank you for commenting. Now, let's get going. Professor, what's the definition of a personality disorder based on a transpersonal therapy approach? What is the definition of a disorder based on a transpersonal therapy approach?
Thank you, our dear host, for this wonderful opportunity. To start with, the foundational philosophy of transpersonal psychology is based on this premise. And the premise is that we are not just a body, we are spiritual beings that we are trying to have a physical experience. And so to have a concept of personality disorder from the transpersonal perspective rests on the principle that when we only associate our identity to the biological self, it becomes very limiting. It becomes very, very limiting. And based on that, whoever reside just only navigating your daily life from your cognitive perspective, which is through your sensory apparatus, through the stimuli in your environment, and you are operating a software within your subconscious, and that subconscious place is where the residual of every memory that we have from our childhood are being stored. And from the subconscious mind, personality disorder arises from traumatic experiences from our past as has not been dealt with. These are disturbances that exist based on a particular way of thinking, is a thinking pattern that leads to this disorder. And that is what we mean, that is our perspective from transpersonal psychology about personality disorder is a function of distorted way of thinking.
Thank you. Thank you. And how do we describe the individual?
Okay. Now, the individual that is, for example, let me start from the transpersonal concept of the individual. According to transpersonal perspective, an individual is not just a body. An individual has an element that is a transpersonal identity that is based on the element of a spiritual consistency within our embodied self. And this spiritual consistency or constitute of the human existence exists beyond time and space. So the individual is not only an embodied entity, the individual is a spiritual entity living in an embodied suit. That is the individual perspective from a transpersonal psychological foundation.
Thank you, Professor. Professor, we're going to be back with you just one moment. We'll take a moment to welcome Sean back on the Extraordinary Achievers Show. Sean, can you hear us now? Sean's internet is playing up a little bit. We appreciate that. Sometimes these things happen. Sean, can you hear us? Sean cannot hear us as yet, but we do hope to welcome soon. Let's have some more comments coming up from our viewers at home. Mildred says, hi everyone, just happy to be here. Can't wait to hear from all the speakers. It's an amazing show. Keep it up. And a virtual hug to you too. Thank you so very much. Thank you. And Kelsey says, PK says, good evening, the Extraordinary Achievers, and good evening to you too, PK. And Louisa Ati, hey, my good friend. She says, good evening, my darling friend, and good evening to you, my dearest darling friend. And Brenda Dempsey says, good evening, and is a publisher, Brenda Dempsey of Book Brilliance. Good evening to you. We welcome your comments. We welcome your shares. If you haven't shared it yet, please do share it on other Facebook platforms, WhatsApp groups. Someone needs to hear it somewhere. YouTube, hello. Twitter, hello to you. LinkedIn, we thank you for watching. Meetup, thank you for watching. And the various Facebook platforms that we are live right now, including the Extraordinary Achievers page, my personal page, and several other admins that allow us to air live on their Facebook pages. We thank you. We are going to try and say hello again to Sean and see if this time round media team says Sean is not live. We do hope to have Sean back on our screens. So we are going to once again go back to the professor.
Thank you.
Professor Femi, why did you decide to take on personality transpersonal therapy approach? What interested you to this topic?
Oh, I mean, thank you for this question. Yeah, my background is in medical sciences. So I spent 4 years in medical school with a medical degree in anatomy, physiology, and biochemistry. And then after that, I left and I went to explore theology. So I went to seminary college for 2 years and I got ordained. And so I moved from medical sciences to theology. And later, when I came to England some 13 years ago, I decided to explore psychology. It was during my study of psychology that I began to have a passion to look into the spirituality and psychology, what with coaching. And the main reason why I did that, I'm looking for an holistic perspective to look after the parishioner and to explain certain psychosomatic problems they are encountering in their personal life. And so that's what actually drove me into that. And I was able to look at an integrated coaching approach that can encompass the social, the intellectual, the emotional, the cognitive, and the physical development of the individual. And so I found out that our problem is really about identity. And the question is, our identity is not just the biological identity. If we live all our life just on the embodied self, that is on our sensation, on our feeling, it will lead to crisis. Why is that? Because the human spirit exists beyond time and space. I say it again. The human spirit exists beyond time, has the ability to influence the social, the emotional, the cognitive, and the intellectual. Thank you.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Thank
Professor, could we see if Sean can hear us now? Sean, hello. And Sean, can you hear us now?
I can. Thank you.
Fantastic. And welcome on to the Extraordinary Achievers Show. Professor, we will be back with you shortly. And we are going to now ask Sean, the author of Control Freak, a couple of questions. Sean, as per your book, Control Freak, how does a dream of a romantic fairy tale become a nightmare of a relationship?
Well, Wynette, I think that the problem with romance is it's all very well in the moment, and it's euphoric, and it's, in a way, it's not real life because you're getting outside of real life into a world which is makes you feel good about yourself. And when some men, like John in the book, know how to make people feel good and know how to make them fall in love with them, and we're all anxious to fall in love because it's what people want, and it's obvious from everything out there, like dating sites and TV programs. There's so many about love and falling in love and finding your ideal partner that vulnerable people can fall in love very easily, and they're all caught up in the romance, and that's all very well until they get married, and then the things can change because that brings them back to real life again. But in the book, John in the book is a very clever control freak, because he knows what Josephine's all about. He gets her to tell him what she's all about, and then he knows how to make her fall in love with him. So he does all the right things, romances her, dinners, big gestures, and then the ultimate gesture, of course, is a marriage proposal. And Josephine's in love with this, obviously. She's in love with the whole thing, as well as in love with John. And maybe she's not even in love with John. She might just be in love with what he's doing at the time. So, but then people like John, once they get what they want, they no longer have to do the big gestures. They no longer have to be nice. And so they turn the other way. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you still hear me? Hello?
Thank you. Yes, we can still hear you, and thank you. There was a temporary glitch that's there. Thank you very much. Yes, we could still hear you. You did mention that sometimes it's because individuals are vulnerable.
Yes.
And it's the individuals that are vulnerable. And in my coaching world, I've seen that individuals sometimes that are not vulnerable in a certain particular way, but obviously are missing that the things that John does, like John in the Control Freak, your book. It's the things that he does, right, that kind of captivates, and one thinks that they've arrived to a fairy tale romance. Would you say that?
Yes, because he does all the right things. He knows what women want, and he does all the right things. Women, all women and men as well, they want romance and they want love, and they want to be treated nicely, and they want to be complimented, and they want people to do things for them, like the gestures, take them out to dinners, take them away for weekends, tell them how wonderful they are. And as I said, the ultimate gesture is, will you marry me? And that to anybody must be just, make them feel really good about themselves. So John does know what to do.
And how does this relate to real true life scenarios?
Well, as I said earlier, if you even look at what programs are on the television at the moment, there's Love Island and Temptation Island. And on websites, I mean, there's a multitude of dating websites out there. So it's obvious that everybody's looking for love and marriage. I have to say, even though divorce is rife and a lot of marriages don't last, marriage still seems to be the ultimate goal for people. People either want what their parents had if their parents were married a long time, or if their parents have broken up, they want what their parents didn't have. So people are eager to find a partner, settle down. It seems to be inbuilt into people that is what you're supposed to do in life, and that's what makes you the happiest, or so they think. But people rush into it, which is part of the problem. During the what we would call the housing boom in Ireland, a lot of young people were encouraged to buy their own properties, their own houses, and that included a lot of young couples who really weren't ready for that, because they were in the throes of romance and the good times and being able to go out and be able to spend their money and do what they want. And then they were encouraged to take a mortgage, buy a house, settle down, move in together. And then the reality came much too quickly, because they really hadn't got to know each other at that stage. So when you move in then and live with somebody and discover that the romance is gone because you can't afford what you afforded before, you can't afford to do the things you did before, you can't afford the romantic holidays, the romantic dinners, going out, going to movies, everything then becomes much more difficult, and they see life as it is.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Sean. Sean, I'm reading page 224 of The Control Freak, and it says, let's just kiss and say goodbye. Is that it, John? She thought, as he took his things opened the door and left. She
Yes.
didn't bother to follow. Despite her resolve, she would feel the tears begin to roll down her cheeks. Was it sadness, fear, or just the absolute relief of having her freedom back after all this time? Then she realized he's done it again. He's preempted me. Did he actually know that I was planning to look for a divorce, a barring order, that I wanted him out of the house? Now he looks like the good guy, the reasonable one. Mr. Cornell was right. We should have charmed the judge. Tell us what happens before this and what happens straight after this part.
Well, this is a situation where Josephine, because of the way he has treated her at this stage, has decided that she wants out of the marriage. And she's gone to a solicitor to seek his advice. And he's told her what she could do and should do, which is to get a divorce. But John somehow has got to know what she's doing. And this may be because he's stalking her. She doesn't know that at this stage, but this may be because he's stalking her. And he knows that she's gone to the solicitor. So obviously, she's no other reason to go to the solicitor. So he knows it's about the marriage. And now what he does is he suggests to her that they need some time apart. And so he leaves the family home, leaving her there on her own. But he really has no intention of ending the marriage. He just wants to, he's playing with her again. But as you read out there in the paragraph, Josephine doesn't know whether this is a good or bad thing because she's not sure. And she's not sure herself whether she wants the marriage to end. This is part of the problem as well, because she's only just been to see the solicitor and she's only just hasn't really decided what she's going to do. And for him to actually up and leave, it leaves her, it confuses her because now she doesn't know whether she wants the marriage to end or not. So again, he's playing with her. He knows what to do to confuse her, play with her mind. And this is the thing, a lot of abusive relationships are not about violence. It's not about using your fists. A lot of it is about the mental control and the mental abuse of people. And if you leave somebody confused, not able to think for themselves, then you can basically get them to do what you want.
Thank you, Sean. Sean, what can a control freak, what can we remind others to remember on looking for love? So we're looking at control freaks, we're analyzing control freaks. And as you said, a lot of people are on the internet, on dating websites. What should one remind themselves on looking for love? And remembering that some of these control freaks are not just on dating websites. They're in our community. They're around us. They're amongst us. They're people that we think we know, but it's a completely different thing. As a West Indian says, no one live with one, sleep with one is two different things altogether. But what should we look in? What should we be looking at? What sort of behavior patterns are we looking at here?
Well, the thing is, first of all, as the saying goes, if something is too good, if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. And this is the thing with control freaks. They tend to go over the top. So if somebody is treating you very, very well, not putting a foot wrong, seems to be the perfect man, he's probably not. You want to look for the warning signs. He wants a lot of your time. This is part of it. He will smother you basically in affection and smother you with his presence. And I don't mean that just by turning up in person. I mean by phone calls, texts, emails. And although it might seem that he just can't live without you, it may be he just doesn't want you to live without him. Now, the thing about it is, it's all very well to fall in love, and I'm not telling people not to fall in love. That wouldn't be a very nice thing to do. But when you do fall in love, it's all very euphoric and it's all feeling good and you feel good and you don't tend to think of bad things. And you don't want to think of bad things. You don't want to think that the person you're falling in love with is a bad person. But you've got to stop at some stage and think for yourself and just say, do I really know this person? And have I given myself enough time to know this person? On top of that, we have much better chance nowadays to find out about people, because on the internet you can find out a lot of things. And if you don't know how to do it yourself, then if you have a friend who's good at that sort of thing, get them to check if you have any doubts at all, get them to check somebody out. It's very easy to find out a lot of things about people on the internet, because people nowadays, their information tends to be out there. So if you find out certain things about somebody on the internet that they haven't told you, that they should have told you, then you need to be very careful.
Thank you, Sean. We've been listening to Sean, the author of Control Freak. Someone asked the question, where is your book available from? Where can one purchase it from? And it is available and not limited to the following outlets: Amazon.com, Amazon.co.uk, Waterstones, W.H. Smith, Barnes and Noble, AB Books, Booktopia, and this book is also available on Kindle. And besides that, if you just type in Control Freak on Google, it comes straight up there. Type in Control Freak and type in Sean, and it comes up. Sean, thank you for this time. We want to read and up onto our screens, and it's from Dada, saying, sounds like a good read. And I have a book, and I can assure you, I received my book on Saturday and I could not put it down. It's an amazing read. And J2E says, abusive relationships are about the perceived power over another. And that is very, very true. We thank you for your comments. We thank you for your acknowledgements. And Sean, we will be back with you, as we are now going to go back to Professor Femi. Professor Femi, thank you, and welcome back onto our screens. Professor, we have a question for you that's coming up onto our screens now. Melissa says, do control freak tendencies develop childhood traumas or lack of childhood luxuries in overall? She asked the question.
Okay, thank you, Melissa.
Childhood.
Thank you for that question. Every adult display behavioral distorted way of thinking can be traceable to childhood experiences. Yes. And those experiences are residing in our subconscious part of the mind, where the memory don't go away. So a control freak is an insecure individual that has developed a protective mechanism to protect his damaged, insecure, fragile ego by taking control of the situation and in a relationship. Is a sign of insecurity that can be traceable to a traumatic experience in their childhood. And they will need to acknowledge that, and they will need therapy to explore that. So it's a sign of an insecure individual that have developed a strategy to protect their ego, based on a traumatic experiences most of the time in their childhood. And the memory reside in the subconscious mind, and they don't go away. And the problem with that is every memory has a feeling, because memories are thought coded in our subconscious mind that has emotions attached to it. And so for this individual that are control freak, is because they don't want to be a victim of circumstances based on that. So they've developed a protective strategic superiority complex that they are using that to control situations. And it is very, very, very dangerous for such individual, because at the end of the day, they will lose out.
Thank you, Professor. Yesterday, I was on a WhatsApp group as I posted today's program, and someone on that group asked me the question that, did I not think that some kind of control and obsessive control is good? that they can be anything good. Now, from my own perspective, this is what I said. I said, well, I think anything that is too much of anything is a bad thing. Now, my mom was a clean freak. I mean, she made us move our beds every single morning to have it swept under, cleaned. And she wanted the house so that you could actually eat from the floor. Now, I developed a similar obsession with cleaning. It's got better over years, because as my children got older, I realized that I have to meet them halfway. And so I would allow something to sit somewhere where it's not supposed to sit. But I'm actually at my very, very happiest when the house is 100% clean. I love it when things are in order. I feel calm. If I wake up and I'm passing each room and everything is in place, I feel whole. I feel at peace. I feel that tranquility. There are places that maybe in the living room, a book or something could be left not sitting in the right place. But when it comes to the kitchen and bathroom, I'm very, very, very particular. Would you say that I'm a control freak in that way?
No, you are not. I would say you are not. You are not a control freak in that way. You have a value system, that has been developed based on your social context, and you learn that through the significant adult in your life. And this person is your mom. So this is a value system that you've developed for cleaning. So you have an appetite to make sure things are clean. You know, there's nothing wrong in that. The only problem is that there is always a line of demarcation when it becomes obsessive. It becomes obsessive when you cannot tolerate people bringing disorder or chaos. So it's a question of what is your level of tolerance when you see disorder. You see that? So if you are not patient enough to embrace a degree of disorderliness, that is when we begin to look for personality disorder. That is it. But from your narrative today, you are able to allow the kids to put things in order. You are still patient and you are not losing your cool. This is where it becomes dangerous. When all of a sudden you lose your cool, by the way, why is everything okay? Now that's a problem. That's a problem, because that is a sign of personality disorder, because you are not able to control your emotion when things are not going your way. That is a very big sign to look out for.
Okay, fantastic. I love that definition. If you're not able to control a scenario or a way, that's when it becomes obsessive. Yeah. Professor, can you please define for us a narcissist personality disorder?
Yeah, thank you for that. It's a disorder that I would say it worship the God of self. I say it again. It's the basic concept of narcissistic disorder is an individual that they worship the self. What do I mean by that? Everything revolves around them. They don't care about your feeling, your need. It is about what they need, and they see every individual as an object to satisfy their own gratification. In other words, they are users. They will use you and they will dump you. They lack empathy. They don't care about your feeling. All they are looking for is what reside. Their need, it is me, and everything has to go in their way. It's a very, very dangerous prison to be. A narcissistic person, they don't see the future. They want instant gratification and they want it now. They want it their own way. It's a very, very dangerous prison. They are in prison in that very mindset. And besides, it's attributed to a pattern of thinking. So they have this self-concept, a self-image that they should be treated special. They are special and everybody must treat them special. And if you ignore them, it pains them. And that tells you that they are approval addicted individual. When you don't give them that approval, they will devalue you. They will rubbish your success. They cannot stand other people's success, what they achieve. Wow, it's a very dangerous place to be. That is a narcissist.
So the word narcissist and this personality disorder is something that as women we talk about a lot. I know you men talk about it too, but as females we tend to talk about it quite a lot because I personally think 50% of the women that I know, and the percentage sometimes is higher depending on the circles that I'm in, have all had a partner with a narcissist personality disorder. When we done the program last week, we were inundated with comments and questions and referrals from individuals that had lived with a partner that was a narcissist personality disorder. We also had individuals that were saying they didn't realize that their partner was a narcissist. So we thank you for coming on the show today and for further expanding and explaining on this. Professor, we're going to read some comments together from some of our viewers. J2E says, it should be noted that there are both men and women who are control freaks. Absolutely 100%. I have a male friend and he could not stop crying about the control freak of the wife that he had. Very true. Prince Ezra says narcissists believe the world revolves only around them and no one else matters, and that is very, very true. We've covered this topic as well with Prince Ezra, and Prince Ezra would like to say, hey, we miss you in London. When are you coming back to visit? Hello to everyone in the US. J2E says that sounds like me, Lady Waynard. I think we are OCD. Do you know, J2E? I used to be excessively OCD. I used to, when anyone got up from the sofa, and I used to puff back the cushion when they go to the toilet, and my friends used to tell me to stop it. But I'd like to say, Professor, I have got a lot better. But yes.
Bless you.
And Tani says, how do control freaks usually fix things when they feel disconnected from a partner? That's a very good question, because let's say a control freak gets caught out doing something. They get caught out lying, cheating. How do they control things when they feel now they're kind of disconnected from this partner? What do they do?
Yeah, they go into what we call withdrawal syndrome. They will just withdraw, and they withdraw. And then once they withdraw, because don't forget that a control freak is also suffering from an inflated ego, yes. And they also worship the God of self. There's self-worship. And so when they disconnect, what they do is that they totally go into that mode of ignoring, and they are not in touch with their feelings. They completely act as if they have no feeling. They go into withdrawal. They withdraw totally from that partner. And why is that? Because they are doing that so that the partner will come looking for them. That is their strategy. The partner will come looking for them, asking them questions about, why are you doing this? Why is that? Because they are attention seekers. They are attention seekers, because when they don't get their way, they will do everything to gain your attention. And what they will do when they got caught is they will withdraw. They will just cut you away. They will blank you. They will withdraw. They are partners that in the house, they will walk past you in the morning without saying hi to you.
Okay. They're trying to take charge again, right? It's all about being in control. There's a comment that came up from Lisa, and Melissa says, I came across a lady who said that mental issues such as bipolar or personality disorders, etc., do not exist if you're a Christian, and it is actually demons playing with you. I disagree, because I don't think mental problems come down to religion. Is that correct? I guess this is where your spiritual aspect maybe is asking from that angle.
Oh, thank you. That's a very good question. Yeah. When it comes to the issue of Christian philosophy, when anyone receives Christ, what changed in you is your spirit is recreated, but your mind is not born again. I'll say it again. The mind is not born again. And the mind has to be renewed. And that was what the Pauline philosophy talks about, the renewing of the mind, from the Greek word metamorpho, where we have the word metamorphosis. So in other words, it's not demonic. Yeah, someone can be born again, your spirit is recreated, but in your mind, in your subconscious, there are memories of traumatic experiences in your childhood that are residing there. And based on that memories of your childhood traumatic experiences, it formed an image of self that leads to becoming a control freak. I will say it again. So there's an image of self, a self-concept that acts like a software that controls your personality in your subconscious mind, regardless of your spirit being born again or being recreated. You can speak in tongues, you can pray, and you can still have a control freak personality because it will reside in your subconscious mind, and it's a pattern of behavior there.
Mel, we hope that answered your question. Professor, I think you answered it so very well, and thank you. We are going to give you a moment, Professor, and we're coming straight back to you. We're going to welcome Sean back onto our screens again. Sean, I'm going to read your dedication again because of the book, as I did earlier. And for some of the viewers that just joined us, Sean is the author of Control Freak. And the dedication written in the book says, this book is dedicated to all those who have been abused physically or mentally by someone they loved and trusted, without whose stories it wouldn't have been written. I can only hope that with the growing awareness, help, and support that is out there, they will become less and less. Remember that if you're afraid to live your life and to share your thoughts and feelings for fear of retribution, it is not a loving relationship. It is time to get out and to get help. We have a few comments of individuals, Sean, that are asking us where to get the book from, I know I addressed this earlier. I'm going to address it again. From Amazon, Waterstones, W.H. Smith, Barnes & Noble, ABE Books, that's Abe Books, Booktopia, Take a Lot, and this book is available on Kindle. I always know that the book always comes a different kind of way. I'm trying to look at the screen. I never know how to do it. It's called Control Freak by Sean McLean. Sean, as you've been listening to the professor sharing from the psychology view, and you are a lawyer, and so you have seen so many cases that you have witnessed where control freak and narcissists have been extreme. Is there anything you want to share with our viewers at the moment?
Well, I thought it interesting when you yourself said that you had an obsession about cleaning, because in your and you said in your childhood that's because your mother was very obsessive about cleaning. Part of that, I think, comes from your willingness to please. And remember, control freaks are not just about partners. It's about families as well. I think last week I was listening to your broadcast last week, and I think it was Sherry Ann or Priscilla brought up that control freaks are within families as well, like mothers, fathers, maybe even sons, daughters. And when you grow up with a willingness to follow your mother or father, what they taught you to do, you have a willingness to please them. And I think control freaks will home in on people that are of that same type of mindset, that they want to please, so that the control freak knows that they want to please, so he can get them to do anything that will please him or her. As we said earlier, it was just between men and women, so either to please him or her. So if they have a person that is willing or eager to please, then they're much easier to control. And the other thing about control freaks is, listening to the professor, was that the thing I think about control freaks is that the dangerous time with the control freaks is when they lose control. And a lot of, unfortunately, one of my clients was murdered by her husband. And this happened. It happens in a lot of marriages, unfortunately, that wives or husbands are killed by their partners. And that happens at a time when I think that they feel that they have lost control. So if a control freak feels that his wife is going to leave him, or a wife feels her husband's going to leave her, they may become violent and they may go to the extreme, depending on the personality. But I say not all freaks, not all control freaks are psychopaths, but there are some.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean. Sean, we have got a couple of comments, and we're going to address one comment with you about things getting extreme. It'll come up on our screen shortly. Patrick T says, self-love is something that our culture passionately encourages in people now. But in the context of narcissism, this is being a bad thing. I understand we're discussing extremes, but it's confusing. So I think it's become confusing for Patrick. Patrick says, self-love is something that our culture passionately encourages in people now. So yes, we're encouraging self-love, but he says, but in the context of narcissism, this is being a bad thing. I understand we're discussing extremes, but it's a bit confusing. Would you like to explain where we are at the moment, please, Sean, to Patrick?
Well, I don't think it may be confusing to some people, but I mean, loving yourself doesn't mean that you have to love yourself to be the only one that you love. I mean, you can love yourself and love others as well. And I think this is where empathy comes in. I think you spoke last week and you're talking about empathy. Some people, some control freaks and narcissists don't have any empathy. So their problem is they love themselves, but they can't love anybody else, not truly love anybody else. They may say they do, and they may appear to love somebody else, but they don't really. They are, as a professor said earlier on, it's all about them. It's their world, and it's all about them. But you can love yourself and love somebody else and love several other people. It doesn't have to be one way.
That is very true. Sean, we've got another question that's come up from a viewer, and thank you for answering that question. And Jason Appleyard from Father's Rights. And we will be bringing back Father's Rights again back onto the show, and Jason Appleyard, because he is campaigning for Father's Rights when females, mothers, women become obsessive in relationships and they go too far. So that is Jason Appleyard. And Jason, if you have got a moment, please do place a link in the comment box for Father's Rights, because we had a couple of individuals just in the last week that were looking for information for Father's Rights. And Jason says, can professional advice on how to deal with the narcissist? Would they agree by saying yes as much as you can to manage in the short term, but long term, that is unsustainable? How you propose you deal with an ex-wife that has extreme narcissist behaviors?
You want me to answer that?
We're going to pose that question to the professor, but in your experience, I know that you're quite experienced in law, and with what advice would you give where law is concerned? Where the law is concerned?
First of all, if she's a narcissist, she should be happy she's an ex-wife rather than an existing wife. In dealing with ex-partners, it's difficult. The divorce situations are always difficult. And the thing I find or have found in divorces and separations is, unfortunately, that people tend to not take the children into consideration. That they tend to use the children against each other. And that's what I find the saddest part of breakups. And I mean, if you're talking solely about the relationship between husband and wife, I mean, if his ex-wife is a narcissist, if she's out of his life, then hopefully that's the end of that. But if she's still trying to make his life hell, then that may be his problem. How to get rid of that? Well, the first, practically, you got to avoid her as much as possible. If she won't leave you alone, obviously you have to go down the route of getting some sort of restraining order against her.
Mm-hmm.
But you find with narcissists, unfortunately, that they tend to think that they're above the law. So even with restraining orders, a lot of them will not obey it. I mean, I've seen more often than not people breaching these types of restraining orders or barring orders, ignoring them completely. And in Ireland, at least, and I don't think the punishment is severe enough when they do. But practically, I think if she's an ex-wife, just avoid her as much as possible. I know we may not be able to do that because there's children involved, but I mean, don't get involved in her games for a start. If she's trying to use the children against them, or if she's trying to put bad thoughts in the children's heads, don't do the same thing. In fact, don't talk about it to the children, because just do your own thing. You be the better person. You look after your children and try and ignore her as much as possible.
We have been listening to Sean McGlynn, the author of Control Freak, which is available on several different platforms such as Amazon, Waterstones, etc. Please do type it into Google, and we'll also be sharing the link in the comment box below. Sean, we would like to thank you so much for joining us on the Extraordinary Achievers and for taking time out to share your experience and your book, Control Freak. Thank you for your time.
You're very welcome, and thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. Professor Oluwafemi is a professor of transpersonal psychology at Elroy London University, the Vice Chancellor, PhD in transpersonal psychology, a principal consultant in transpersonal psychology. His focus is on a non-religious concept of spirituality, transpersonal psychology with psychosynthesis coaching. His development of the transpersonal self through a spiritual coaching, organizing seminars and workshops on transpersonal awareness with the application of transpersonal psychology in everyday living. And we have him back on our screens now. Professor, what treatments are available for personality disorders?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most important, there are two approaches to the dealing with personality disorder. Number one is the therapeutic approach, which is through the talking therapy. And in the case of extreme personality disorder, there is also medication, which involves a symptom of psychosis. So, but what I strongly advocate is a transpersonal approach to that treatment. And what does that really entail? Is to help the individual to look at their concept of self, through exploration of patterns of thinking. So it's an integrated approach of cognitive behavioral therapy and psychodynamic therapy, which entails approaches such as an exploration of the thinking. Don't forget, narcissistic behavior, it's based on a thinking pattern that is established in cognitive psychology, which simply means I think, I behave. I think, I behave. And so what the therapeutic session is looking for is a conversation between the therapist and the client, in this case, a narcissistic person, to explore the roots of their thinking pattern that has sustained such narcissistic tendency and behavior. But the way out is for the individual to acknowledge. Don't forget, narcissism it's also rooted in pride, ego, the worship of the self. So the individual must acknowledge first that they are in that pattern, because most of narcissists, they live in denial, in self-denial. They will deny that because they are so blinded and they don't see that in them. They see the world through the lens of narcissism. And because of that, most of them live in denial of that symptom.
Fantastic. Thank you, Professor. Professor, I hear a beep on from your end. Just in case you need to plug in your device, we're going to read a couple of questions whilst we give you a moment and we will be straight back to you in 60 seconds. So let's read some comments coming up on the screen. And Jason Appleyard said, brilliant. Yep, he speaks the truth, nailed it, does the opposite, take the moral high ground. And that's in response to Sean, the author of Control Freak. And Donald, hey, hi, nice to see you here. He says, well done, very insightful, and thank you for taking time out to join us. And podcaster Norma Ellis, who has a book launch coming at the end of this month, says, great show and great to have you here. And Norma, if you can send a link onto the platform, please, for your book launch at the end of this month, please, that will be amazing. We will make sure we advertise it and talk about it next week. But if you can put a link in, we would really appreciate it. And out Elizabeth Molliflower Augusta herself, the amazing woman, says, great topic, sis, sending best wishes. And thank you for joining us. You're an amazing woman, and I greatly love you so much. And Elizabeth Page Ade says, thank you, Sean. And there you go, Sean. Elizabeth says, thank you. JTU says, is there an element of mental ill health associated with personality disorders? And we are going to bring the professor on to answer this question. Is there an element of mental ill health associated with personality disorders, Professor?
Yes, also depending on the severity of the personality disorder, that borderline. So, of course, a personality disorder is a pattern, it's a distorted or a disturbed way of thinking, and it's established by that is displayed by a behavioral pattern. So, of course, as an element of that. But for example, when we have excessive personality disorder, it becomes a mental health challenge. So they will need a therapeutic intervention to see a therapist or a psychiatrist. Yes, yes. Depending on the severity of the disorder, it goes into mental health challenges, of course.
Thank you. And there's another question again for you, Professor. And the question is as follows. Thank you for answering these questions. And Banky says, deep down, what are control freaks afraid of? Afraid of not being in control.
Exactly. Yeah.
Over to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Banky, yes, they are afraid because they are insecure. It's a sign of a fragile self-esteem. Control freak, they are suffering from a damaged ego, fragile self-esteem, which is simply low self-esteem. That is it. And that's why they want to be in control. So because once they are in control, they have the sense of security by controlling the situation. Yeah. So they are afraid of not having their way. They are afraid to be a victim. They are afraid to be a loser. They don't want to lose at the end of the day in any transaction they have within their social environment. And that is very limiting, because in life, there are things you cannot control. There are things we cannot control, and to have an healthy, balanced emotional lifestyle is to recognize the things you cannot control and the things you cannot, and the thing that you can control. That is a beginning of a healthy emotional and mental life.
Fantastic, amazing. And we've got another question for you. And Tanya says, what is the best strategy to deal with control freaks?
Okay, it's interesting. Also, thank you, Tanya. The best strategy to deal with control freak is for you, whoever is in that relationship, is to acknowledge your role, because oftentimes people also contribute to the control freak having their way. For example, if you have a partner that's always having their way, so you can say, oh, because I want peace to reign and let him have his way, but you are fueling that behavior. It can be in a child. As a parent, your kids always throw tantrum all the time when you don't have your way. And you can say, oh, it's a kid, it's a child. You are breeding it. You are breeding it. So the strategy is to acknowledge that, wait a minute, there are boundaries. Number one. Number two, you confront them with an empathic understanding. I say it again, confronting by empathic understanding. Don't condemn, don't attack them, but confront them with an empathic understanding. That is a very important strategy.
Amazing. Professor, can you please explain to us about talking therapy and what is transpersonal therapy? Talking therapy and what is a transpersonal therapy?
Okay. Well, thank you, host. A talking therapy, from the expression, is when you go and see a qualified therapeutic individual by engaging in conversation. Is a conversational technique. So, which happens with a certain condition that has to be put in place. Number one, the therapist must have unconditional positive regard. Number two, the therapist must create an atmosphere whereby the client has trust and they feel safe and secure. And to guarantee that is to have a non-judgmental attitudinal disposition. I say it again, is to have a non-judgmental dispositional attitude towards the client. Now, transpersonal therapeutic intervention. In transpersonal therapeutic intervention, we believe that every human is on a journey of spiritual evolution, and transpersonal therapeutic intervention encompasses the social, the cognitive, the intellectual, the emotional, the spiritual. Is an holistic perspective of looking at an individual. So we are not looking at you just based on your intellectual. We are looking at you from your social. We are looking at you based on the evolution of your spiritual understanding. What does that mean? It's an understanding of the fact that you are not your body. You are a spirit that lives in a body. You have a transpersonal identity that exists beyond time and space. And if you can grab this understanding of and this consciousness of this part of your existence, you will see that you are not going to be navigating your life based on your sensations and your sensory apparatus by receiving stimulus in the environment, and you are doing and you are dealing with life just on your physical senses. A transpersonal understanding brings you above embodied self, brings you above materialism, brings you above competitiveness, because you see life from a position of expansion, a position of peace in your mind, because you know that this world that we live is just temporal, that you exist beyond time and space. You are a spirit trying to have a physical experience. With this kind of understanding, we bring that in the transpersonal conversation to explore our client identity, their sense of identity. It is not a religious thing. We're not imposing any religious philosophy on the client. We are only helping the client to evolve in their transpersonal journey, to discover their true identity, to look at their philosophy, their values about life. What is their values about time and space? This is what we do in a transpersonal therapy. Go beyond the body self to look into the eternal dimension of our existence. That is the core of transpersonal therapeutic intervention. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing, Professor. I could listen to you all day, absolutely all day. We have a couple of questions that we're going to give a snapshot response to from yourself, only because of time. Okay, so podcaster Norma Ellis, who has a book launch at the end of this month. Please do share the details in the comment box below. Norma asks this question: can a person have more than one personality? Depends which side I wake up on. I think I got one.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to answer you from a transpersonal perspective and also from traditional psychological theory of personality. Now, if you look at the theory of personalities, there are traits, personality traits that we exhibit that constitute our personality. So from that perspective, you can have some dominant traits. For example, somebody can be an extrovert. It doesn't mean that they are always quiet. Somebody can be an introvert. So that is the cognitive aspect of their personality. So there's always a combination of traits that dominate that particular behavior. And that's why we now say, okay, this is your personality. However, from the transpersonal dimension, you have one personality, and that is it, your spiritual personality, which
Wow.
is above every other embodied personality. Because from the cognitive aspect, you are looking at personality from the biological existence, from genetic contribution, my genes. Why should we live our life at the mercy of our gene? No, there is more to your life than your gene. Your gene cannot determine your behavior. That is our argument in transpersonal psychology. Because the spirit exists before the body. I say it again. The spirit exists before the body. We believe in transpersonal psychology. There's what we call pre-personal, which means you are being in existence before you manifest in your mother's womb. So you are above time and space. That is your personality.
Wow. I think we need to do a program just on that existence of of this spirit before the body itself. I find that absolutely and extremely exciting, and I think we should actually explore that at some other point. And Professor, one more question. Zara says, what advice would you give to today's younger audience who feel they got to control their partner's social media, where they go and who they meet? Society today apparently deems it appropriate. So this online stalking and controlling people online, younger audience, what's your advice?
Yeah. My strong advice. By the way, I used to be a secondary school teacher in this country, and I have such experiences with young people. Yeah. The problem with our young people is our educational system only talk about intellectual growth without talking about their self-esteem and self-concept. And that's why we are advocating a transpersonal education, whereby people, young adult, you have to understand that you are secure by yourself. Stalking on social media is a sign of insecurity. It's an evidence of what we call approval addiction. Our young adults nowadays, they are addicted to people's approval, which is a sign of lack of security in their individuality. So when you are secure in who you are, you don't chase people's social media, what my partner is doing. No, you have not find out so much uniqueness in you. That's why you are doing that. So when we teach you how to fall in love with yourself, how do you do that? By discovering your uniqueness, which is simply means your gifts and your talent. So we need an educational system that would improve our understanding of our uniqueness, self-discovery, self-concept. My dear, if you discover your uniqueness, people will queue to follow you. You will not be the one chasing up and checking people, what is my partner doing? It's because you have not discovered the unique thing about you. And you are so unique that nobody else before you or after you will ever find out this world. And we need you to find out uniquely. And that's why we're advocating for a transpersonal education curriculum.
That's amazing. Because if they'd asked me that question and asked me to answer, I would say, get a life and mind your own business.
Bless you.
And that's why we have you on the show. Okay, we have a couple more questions. We apologize that we're overrunning, but we want to acknowledge those couple of other questions for you, and then a snapshot response from you once again. J2E says, it has been mentioned that parents can be controlling. How can that be differentiated from parenting your child, especially in today's society? That is a question I really and truly love. When sometimes I'm told I'm being a controlling mother, can you tell us what's the difference? What's the difference?
Yes, don't blame the parents. If you think they are controlling, it's not that they are controlling. They are after your security. They are two different. And because they have experiences, they love their kids. I'm a father of two kids. You want the best for your kids. You want them to be secure, to be in a safe environment, in a safe relationship. But the problem is when you begin to force your own dream and your vision on your kids, that is controlling. That is what many parents, especially from, with due respect, from the Afro-Caribbean community, based on my experience, are doing that. They want their kids to live their dream. That is dangerous. That is frustrating. Because you fail to be a doctor, then you think, when I have a child, it's going to be a doctor. That is controlling. You cannot control that destiny, because they've been sent to this planet through a higher power. You are only a custodian, and your role is to create enabling environment for these kids to develop, discover, and release their hidden potential. However, they will look after your security because they want the kid to be secure. That's not controlling. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. We would like to welcome Sean, the author of Control Freak, back onto our screens. And we thank you so very much for your patience, for taking time out, for being with us, gentlemen, today. We are going to read the last comments together. We have so many comments, and we are now overrunning by 15 minutes. And Zara says, wow, this is amazing. I wish you the best in getting this broadcast and future ones heard. Zara, thank you so much. And if you can help us to share, we truly are grateful. Elizabeth says, I agree with you. There is a need to run an event. I can listen to Professor all day long. Oh, at least someone else says there's another chatterbox besides me, Professor. Okay. And then Patrick T says, Christ, I hope not all young adults think that's okay. And I think he was talking about the stalking on social media. And Norma says, thank you. I totally agree with Professor about the spirit and the expert of this dimension of life. That's another thing. And Sean, you might want to write another book on that one too. And Bangi says, so very deep. Thank you, Professor, for the insight. And thank you. And Doc Mutoko says, my thoughts go to the children who are caught up in the middle of such relationships. And we thank you for that comment, which is coming from the social aspect. And Elizabeth says, brilliant. Thank you for Professor for answering those questions. And we have Elizabeth says, thank you, Sean, for all your contribution, and we truly appreciate you. And don't forget, his book is out, Control Freak. Type it onto Google, you'll find it. Amazon, Waterstones, all of them, it's there. And Donald says, well done, very insightful, and thank you for taking time out today. Let's see if we've got any other comments coming up onto our screen. We would like to thank you, Professor Oluwafemi Esan. We would like to thank you, Sean McLean, the author of Control Freak. We thank you so very much for taking time out and being with us today. We apologize if we have not read your comment. We have been trying to go through them as much as we can. We apologize, we're running out of time today. We appreciate you and we acknowledge your presence. Please do join us every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, various platforms, YouTube, and of course on our website. And we would like to thank you for sharing. We would like to thank you for participating. And most importantly, we thank our guests today. We would also like to thank the Extraordinary Achievers Show media team that work in the background to ensure that this program is broadcasted to you efficiently. So we would like to say to that team, thank you. And Aideen, well done. You've done an amazing job today. King Darren, Prince Jordan, thank you so very much. PK, thank you so very much. And we'd like to say to the admin team that work tirelessly behind the scenes, we would like to say thank you to Mel, and we would like to say thank you to Heather, our quality manager. We would like to say thank you to everyone that supports us in every single week. Everyone, thank you for sharing. We could be here all night calling out your names. I'd like to let you know that I love you, I appreciate you, I salute you, I respect you, and may you equally be blessed with so many favors of the things that you need in your life. In the meantime, see you again next week at 8 p.m. on Wednesday. And Professor, thank you so very much. Professor, thank you for joining us. Sean, thank you for joining us today. And all the best. Remember, Control Freak is the book. It's out. It is amazing. A great read. And if you want to help someone else or allow someone else to know that It's not what they're going through, it is the other person. Or for someone that is going through that personality disorder, please encourage them to watch this show. Professor Femi is hosting Finding Meaning in Life Through Transpersonal Identity Discovery. This will be on Thursday, July the 29th at 9 a.m. to 9:45 a.m. We will post the details in the comment box below, or looking in his LinkedIn or his Instagram or on his website. Thank you and bye for now.
Thank you for watching. You can now follow us on Facebook and subscribe our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, share, and comment.